let me kick off by introducing myself. My name is Soufiane Aboulhouda. I'm currently a 6-year PhD student in George Church's lab at the VIS. I see Ben laughing because he's joining the lab, and it's starting to hurt to say how old I am in my PhD. But outside of that, I have been involved with Nucleate for about 4 years now. Currently serve as one of its co-presidents, and I'm one of its co-founders as well, really working to advance our mission of empowering tomorrow's biotech leaders by educating today's academic trainees. And so with that, I'll hand it off to Marissa, who can then popcorn it around the group.
Thanks, Soufiane. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to virtually be with you all today. My name is Marissa Pettit-Jones, and I am currently a Director of Business Development at Genentech. But back 4 years ago, I was a Harvard Business School student and met Soufiane, and together we co-founded what at the time was the Activator program and has grown into Nucleate as we know it today. And so today I am now a board member and really excited to help Nucleate continue to grow as we spread across the country and in the offerings that we offer. And with that, I will popcorn it over to Gleb, who was one of the folks here today who was in our very first cohort.
Hey everyone, I'm Gleb Kuznetsov, co-founder, CEO of Manifold Bio. Pierce Ogden is my co-founder. He's a CSO, and him and I actually were the pair of students that Soufiane came to and said, hey, do you guys want to do this new thing called Activate a couple of years ago? And so, long story short, we created what was Manifold Bio along with some MBA students, Christina and Julia at the time. We make protein therapeutics. We have a special technology, a protein barcoding technology that sits on top of DNA sequencing, DNA synthesis, all sorts of George Church lab innovations. It lets us do in vivo biologics design, so pool testing at the in vivo stage, also in other complex assays. Now we're 10 people, raised a seed of 5 million last year, located here in Boston at the Life Lab. And yeah.
My name is Cheri Ackerman. I'm co-founder and CEO of Concerto Biosciences. We were in the same first activator program along with Gleb and Pierce. I was there with my co-founder, Jared Kay. We were at the Broad Institute in MIT at the time. So we were very happy that they decided to extend it not just to people at Harvard, but also to people at MIT. And now I could not be more excited to see it going national because it was an incredibly impactful program for us. What we do, we make groups of microbes that do useful things for people. We have a technology that allows us to screen groups of microbes very, very quickly and basically find groups of microbes that actually perform useful functions. And so we don't have to rely on next generation sequencing to infer how microbes interact. We can actually directly measure it. And our first applications are in atopic dermatitis and other dermatology applications.
And let's hear from Josh next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Josh, and I am a co-founder and CEO of Glyphic Biotechnologies, which was a participant in the most recent year of the program. And so I am also excited to see that this is going national because I was one of the few non-Harvard MIT people who participated in the program this past year, which was opened up due to the fact that it was a virtual experience anyways. And my co-founder is Daniel, who was a PhD student at MIT during the program. And he developed and was on this, so he was in the scientific track of the program, and he had developed a next generation single molecule protein sequencing technology while in the lab of Ed Boyden at MIT. And so together we spun out Glyphic from the Nucleate Bio program.
And last but not least, Floris.
Hi everyone, Floris Engelhardt here for Kano Therapeutics. I also went through the same cohort that Josh went through, so the last year. Super excited to be here. I went into that program just being interested in looking into this student trainee-led organization, and the business person I got matched with, we still meet weekly. He is still one of the greatest persons as a sounding board that I could have. I was a postdoc at MIT. just left MIT a couple of weeks ago to like switch to the full-time startup life?
The first question that we have here today for the group is about motivation, and just curious to hear everyone's thoughts on what was your initial motivation for participating in the Activate program, and can you comment on the stage of development at which you entered the program?
So for us, it was super exploratory. We were academics. I was a postdoc. Jared was a grad student. We were nowhere close to spinning out. So when we did it in the spring of 2019, and we didn't found Concerto until the spring of 2020. And that what our goal really was to explore, we had this technology in an academic setting that we knew was the fastest technology in the world for screening groups of microbes and sifting through microbial interaction networks. But what's that good for? And does anyone in industry care? And it was the first place that we heard about things like a technology evaluation matrix, or doing customer research, customer interviews, and got introduced to a whole bunch of folks in the pharma industry who then had opinions about what we should or shouldn't do with the technology and how valuable it would be. And so we were super exploratory with the goal of just, is this a good idea or not? And because we did it, we did the program a full year and a half before we spun out, we then had a lot of time to use the answers to all those questions to shape the work that we did while we were in academia to actually be able to spin out. So if there's anyone out there that's thinking, oh, maybe it's too early for me, we were like 18 months ahead of time was when we actually did the program.
Awesome. And Josh, your timeline was quite a bit different in your experience with the program. So we'd love to hear kind of your take on this.
Yeah. So when I joined the program, I was an MBA student. I'd previously done an MD PhD. I matriculated into an MD PhD program, dropped that, decided I want to be on the business side. And so my motivations for joining the program were that I wanted to use my background in like medicine and science, but focus on the business side of biotech. And so when I joined the program, I was able to meet Daniel, who was a 6-year PhD student in the Boyden lab, who had been developing this technology, but was not at any stage where he had already formally thought about incorporating or forming a company and spinning out. He actually envisioned he had 2 more years left of his PhD before graduating, that 8-year PhD timeline. But because of the program, and because we were able to meet each other through the program, we were able to speak with VCs and other investors who were able to tell us that the stage at which the technology was at was sufficiently far that people would believe in the technology and would want to invest in it to help speed it along faster than what perhaps it could go in an academic setting. And so in terms of like activating, that really like pushed the process along really fast, where then we did incorporate in the middle of the program and then did fundraise. And so I would say like we went from truly no company formation, no conception that we were indeed going to do a company, to it happened.
Yeah, nice. And Gleb, Floris, where do you two fall on this spectrum?
It was kind of sweet timing for us. Myself and Pierce, I had just graduated, sort of doing a postdoc. Pierce was wrapping up his PhD. We had a lot of interesting ideas and a lot of interesting proof of concept going in the lab, and it was sort of time to sort of bring that business structure, business thinking to the floor. Actually, how Cheri mentioned it, of trying to understand how we could sort of start steering our engineering work towards what the opportunity was. And then we actually saw a presentation very similar to the one you just saw, of like the 4 or 5 workshops that were presented, that Marissa and Soufiane presented, and this opportunity of this being sort of an iterative process and having a first rep at, make your deck, make an operational plan, put together a team. And I think our only hesitation was like, okay, you get paired with some MBA students or something somewhere. And we were like, now historically, like our interview process is super intense and rigorous in a good way, I hope. We have a really good team, but we were like nervous about that aspect. But it was cool because we met really good partners, Christina Wang and Julia Pian. And from the beginning, we sort of said, hey, look, like we're not sure if we're gonna like start this company together, but for the program, we're going to team up and treat it like, we're like co-founders. Let's do this thing together and let it organically play out if it makes sense to work together afterwards. And so that was we just dove in, did all these iterations, and really updated our direction, gave us good momentum that we took away to the next steps.
Yeah. For me, it was mostly that I came to Boston during a pandemic that happened last year, and I basically knew nobody. And there were no events that you could go to. You were basically stuck at home or you were stuck in the lab. And I was had to work as a postdoc at MIT, but also figure out how to educate myself on entrepreneurship. And that's when I decided to go through the program, because I already had some kind of bad encounters with people who liked the technology and were excited about the idea to start a company, but then right away started with saying, so then we're co-founders and we split 50-50. And that happened from people who I met a couple of times in my life. And the program then allows you to just like work with a business student or work with people who are not there to say, okay, I am coming into this with the expectation that I want to be your co-founder, but I come into it because I want to understand the science side of things, and you can learn from my business view. And that's actually what happened.
And building on those answers, thanks all for providing that overview of what brought you to the program. And you've already started to comment on the impact that Nucleate, or at the time Activate, the Activator program, had on your entrepreneurial journey. And I was wondering if I could ask you to dig in a little bit more there. What specific parts of the program did you find to be most impactful on your journey?
The most impactful was definitely the weekly mentor meetings. What happened after we got into the program and we had our team formed, we actually got matched them with our mentors. And we had 3 insanely awesome mentors. We had Jake Beecraft, who is CEO of STAT and Therapeutics. He was raising his Series A at the time, and he was still making time for us 1 hour every week to meet and just walk through our silly questions with no idea of how to start a company and walk through our pitch deck. And so it was just an amazing hour that we had set apart every week where we could iterate on decks, iterate on our ideas, iterate on market research. That made a huge impact.
I mean, there's a lot of impact for us. I mean, there's very concrete things the pitch deck that we made about a month later, we sort of pitched at a small sort of angel group that Harvard had put together. And we actually got 100K in convertible notes on an uncapped safe. And so we weren't even ready to officially go fundraise or spin out. We made a bank account really quick. They emailed us saying, hey, do you want to have a bank account? We made the bank account and then we emailed back, yes. And so that was cool because that was there. That was resources we could use. But even backing up, I think it was really nice. Each of the workshops just got us in front of people and got us feedback, had people asking us questions. We had to think critically about them. It was the beginning of a list that became very large of the questions we've received and coming up with why are people asking these questions? What are the concise answers? What are the true answers that we believe? We also did kind of our first, it was Christina, one of the MBA students, advised that we get out and start doing something that looks like customer development. So going out, talking to potential customers, partners, just folks, scientists in the industry, and seeing the world the way they do, understanding if there's some way we could work with them, just understanding what's the general opportunity space. And that's a practice that we really continue to build up on top of, and something that's super core to how we've evolved our strategy from there. So, so yeah, I mean, just having that first, I mean, we chose our font that we sort of keep using. It's like what we like. So think little things like that too.
Building on what Floris said, I think the mentorship part of it was also what we got the most out of the Nucleate bio program, given that one, our lead investor was one of the mentors you met during in our mentor cohort. In fact, that mentor, after a couple of weeks, recused himself so that they could, formally do diligence on us, while being fair, not letting us still talk to our other mentors about talking to other investors. And then one of our mentors was from Wilson Sonsini, and they ended up being, and they still are, our corporate counsel for who helped us do everything from incorporate the company to make sure all of the fundraising documents for our seed round were in good form. And so I would say that just the mentorship aspect of it and bringing on really high-powered, very well-known, respected people in the biotech industry really was able to help us launch.
All right, I'll bring us home. I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but the mentorship. So we were paired with 3 incredible mentors who literally are still mentoring us today, 2.5 years later. And only one of them is actually like an investor or a formal advisor to the company. It's just literally like the connections are that strong, and the people they're with you at this such a critical moment in the development of this idea, and they fall in love with it alongside of you and then want to keep seeing this thing get built. And so in addition to just some really insightful mentorship at the time, they still work with us today. And we also met our business co-founder through the program. And he was working at working with us also for 2.5 years, from that program. And so it's just, I think those connections in the early days when the company is mush, right? It could be anything, and you're trying to form it into something that doesn't exist yet. Who it is that's involved in that is so critical, and we wouldn't be here without those people.
Yeah, amazing. And I think one of the common trends we're noticing here is the support system, which really helps facilitate things. And perhaps we shouldn't be too surprised because we tried to design it in that way. So perhaps just glad that it did indeed work. And, if you were to think back to one specific concrete example, the one key strategic insight that really stuck with you throughout this process, what would each of you say that is? And if we can keep it to as short as, what if we could fit that within one sentence? How would you describe that key insight?
I'll give a quote from one of our mentors when we were learning to pitch for the first time. Retsina told us, first, you need to tell them what you're gonna tell them, then tell them what you told them. We still use this framework when we think about organizing pitches and documents, that you really have to, that's how many times you have to tell them if you're trying to drive a point home.
We actually participated in a communication workshop that Activate had at the year afterwards. And in addition to the points, the table stakes that Cheri mentioned, we got this advice of tell people why they should care about what they're about to hear. And I think that's super powerful strategy when you're talking to whoever, a partner, investor, a hire. Communicate why what you're about to tell them is going to be super impactful.
I think one thing that stuck with me was the idea that see your investors as team members and not as advisors or a source just to pitch. And it sounds so easy, but once you're in this cycle, it is something you need to think through again and again, saying, this will be someone who might be on my board. This will be someone who is entering into a relationship with me. It's not that I pitch this and I get money and then I'm out of there, but it is a continuous relationship and you need to click with these people. And it takes time. It takes time to enter these kind of partnerships.
I don't know if I have any like a single like takeaway. I think if there were single takeaways that were that valuable, maybe there would be no need for such a program. But I think because what I was thinking of was actually then like kind of the opposite as what Cheri was saying. I was thinking like, oh, like don't waste your time explaining things to people who don't already believe in what you are, putting forth, right? You should be finding the people that already believe in you and then speaking to them. But I think the answer is there's like nuance to everything, right? And I think by being in like this sort of program where you're speaking to so many different people who come from different backgrounds and viewpoints and thus many have different beliefs on these areas, you can come to get a fuller appreciation of all the different nuances and thus all the perhaps different things you'll need to do in different contexts in order to be successful.
I thought of one more thing that was super important. Soufiane, you used the word like 5 times, iterate, like the iterative nature of the workshops. Like iterating in a startup is like one of the most important things you're going to do. And just being open to that and learning from every cycle really fast is so critical. And that's the value of each workshop and having it shot over and over. And I iterated on, by jumping in, saying again my answer.
Very meta, Gleb. Thanks all. Those are great nuggets of wisdom. I'm seeing some questions come up in the Q&A function, and one that has come up a couple of times is for people who are interested in participating, and Josh, this might be a question more for you than the others, who don't specifically have a technology in mind. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about your experience coming into the program with that orientation?
So I don't know if you guys changed the format this year in terms of how you meet other scientists, but at least during my year, okay. So I went in and I had to submit sort of my like sort of mini CV about like my background so that all the other scientists who were selected could view it. And then I was able to view not only their backgrounds, but also their own scientific ideas that they had proposed to be part of the program. And so I was able to see all of this, sort of all the diversity of ideas and backgrounds, and figure out, one, like which ideas sort of resonated with me, which ones were I passionate about, or could see myself being passionate about. Two, which ones did I have any like background in already, so that I know that my background, I could contribute some talents to what was already there. And then three, the personality of the person and being able to see whether there was an interpersonal fit. And so I think there were so many different criteria that I was evaluating while meeting and communicating with the various other people on the scientific track. And so in the end, that sort of all sort of came together to where my co-founder and I think because there was such a diversity and broad set to like look through and to speak with, I ended with Daniel, who now we party together, we hang out with each other outside of work. We're going to Berlin together in 2 weeks. Nominal, there is a business conference we're going to, but of course it is Berlin. My point though is that I think me going into it, I was evaluating all these different criteria, and I was able to find someone who fit all of the criteria successfully. So.
Yeah, wonderful. And I've been seeing those questions in the chat as well. And I'd say that if you are of a PhD background and interested in applying to the business track, go ahead and apply. And I think the way that we do our selections and team formation will ultimately work itself out. So definitely encourage everybody to apply within the track that they feel best resonates with them. And, switching gears a little bit on the type of question here, would love to hear the panel's comments and experience with diversity in early stage startup formation, and specifically what role you think early stage startup founders can play in improving representation going forward.
I can hop in and just talk about from like a hiring perspective and just creating diversity on your team. I mean, there's one level is on, the team that you're building, the hires, and then especially double clicking and as you build out the leadership team over time. I think one thing that's true in all cases that we focus on is, we sort of acknowledge we have certain networks and the networks can be skewed in terms of certain representation. And the best thing we can do about that is we can compensate on the sourcing side, to reach out to networks that we don't as easily have, put that extra effort to create that diversity in the pipeline. Because at the actual like hire offer time, like you're going to hire the best person. If you're interviewing people that are like skewed and because of the way your network is, then you're going to end up hiring people that, are skewed in that way. So that sourcing is that point where you can really make a difference. And like as startups, you like joining a startup or starting a startup, you have a ton more power over your hiring process and setting it up how you want it to be, which may not be true at sort of, a bigger company.
I can piggyback off that. I think you also have a ton more power in setting the culture of your company too. So, I mean, obviously, the sourcing and just hiring a diverse workforce is super important. But then also creating a space where people feel like they can speak their minds and if there is an issue that, like, I'll just give a super concrete common example is one related to holidays, that like not everybody celebrates the same holidays. And so people being able to say, hey, this particular holiday is like really important based on my background or based on my religion or whatever. Like you want to create an environment where people feel comfortable saying things like that, and where you can have like really good conversations about how do we create spaces for people to take time off and also get like the most work done that we've ever done in our entire lives. And so building that culture, again, it's like a power you're not going to have anywhere else to build a communal culture from the ground up. And I'll just echo what Gleb was saying. We also like literally paid money to get our job descriptions into channels that gave us access to candidates that like would otherwise not be in our networks. So I just strongly encourage people to consider investing like real resources in that. And then maybe the last thing I'll say is just about considering your sphere of influence in the world. So when the stuff with like George Floyd and Black Lives Matter was going on in the summer of 2020, we as a company were involved in a number of like incubator type programs at the time. And our voices obviously don't reach the entire world, but our voices reach the Harvard Life Lab, which is like where our company is currently located. And so we can talk to the Harvard Life Lab leadership about what Harvard and the Harvard Life Lab community is doing to create a more inclusive space. And I think each of us has these spheres of influence. And so when you have those moments where like it's timely and you have that particular platform because of your connections, like if this is something you feel passionately about, I would encourage you to like use that sphere of influence within the ecosystem to try to expand the other people who care about these values.
I think to build on what everyone else has said, I think, Daniel and I, when we started, the two of us trying to figure out how are we going to set up like recruiting practices and hiring practices and the like, I think right at the very beginning, when it's just the core team, that is like the prime opportunity in which to sort of define the processes in place already so that in diversity, equity, inclusion, right, is something that is baked into your mission, into how you're already operating, rather than maybe something that you tack on right afterwards as something that, once you are much further along the process, it's hard to modify those processes themselves. And so I think for us, thinking about, I think what Cheri is saying about where are you going to source applicants, right? These things are very important, making sure that you are expending the effort to reach out to maybe not the most easily accessible outlets based on your own personal network, right? But ones where there are untapped talent that perhaps you would need to expend that effort to reach. And so I think for us, we've been accumulating a list of and speaking with other founders, trying to figure out how the as broad of a resourcing the different sources that we can to put out our job applications and get as diverse a talent candidate pool as possible. Right. So I think that's just one of those ways in which to do that. And I think now we've started working with a recruiter as well, telling the recruiter that this is an important thing to you, right? And that this is something that you want as a priority in that search process, right? And so I think there are many ways in which to make sure that you are able to enhance the diversity of your startup and what you're doing.
And I think to only add one sentence, there is material out there. There is good material out there. There is websites where you can upload your job description and see if it resonates more with male biases or female biases. There are courses out there. There's so much free educational material, and you as the leading person in a company just have the responsibility to go out there and make this your job.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for those, everyone. And heard about a lot of resources available out there. So one thing we'll do on our side is connect with the panelists and get a list of all of those. And then we can, we'll either post it to our website or find some way of distributing all that to the rest of the crew. I do see a lot of questions in the chat about how to start a company. I'd say that apply to Nucleate and you'll find out. That's what we do. And moving on to the next question, would love to hear everyone's take on challenges. What have been some of the key challenges you've experienced as a startup founder, and what advice would you give others?
One of the key challenges, especially when you're building a platform, a biotech, a platform technology, is how do you best use that platform to make impact and to create a company that is valuable. For us, that was something that required a lot of iteration and started, even before the Nucleate program, but also during Nucleate and since then. And one key thing is sometimes to solve that problem or to solve actually any challenge you have with a startup, you may not be the best person to do it. You may not even be the key thing is there are people out there that are, one, really good at solving problems like this, and two, really just jazzed to solve that problem. On the one hand, it's going to be something super core, like finding the right application for a company. For us now, we really have grown into this, seeing ourselves as a therapeutics company, which wasn't true at the beginning of the Nucleate program. And the reason we were to do that is we ended up finding a co-founder, person named Shane Lofgren, just super passionate about the oncology space, super passionate about having conversations with all sorts of folks, just super curious, and really critical thinker, just driven by this. And that's sort of how we solved that problem and got going, around that problem.
I think what you just said with finding the right application, the idea that you might need to switch markets and that the technology you developed and you're comfortable with in your focus area might not be the market you want to go into. To give an example, my background is DNA nanotechnology. I worked on DNA nanostructures, and the reason I worked on this technology on single-stranded DNA production was simply for DNA nano devices that are have a super high potential, but are still like the market is still starting. And then figuring out where this technology can be applied and that there is actually something in cell and gene therapies, which is maybe a market I haven't tapped into, but where the need for this material is there and really urgent and people are willing to spend money on it. That again takes iteration, and that takes that's challenging because you need to get out of your comfort zone and you need to ask a lot of questions and you need to feel comfortable to feel uncomfortable sometimes to figure out where this is going.
One thing that we've been really working on lately is messaging, how we explain this really complex technology and even a really complex product. So one of the challenges is our platform makes it possible to find a new type of product that has never existed before. But if you don't know much about the microbiome, it's not obvious that this new type of product will also be head and shoulders better than the existing ways that people build microbiome products. So you have this issue of first having to explain, hey, the microbiome is this really important thing in human health, and sometimes it breaks and you need to fix it. Well, how should we fix it? Some people try to use single microbes. That doesn't work very well. Some people try to use groups of microbes that they put together based on correlations. That doesn't work very well. What if we could put groups of microbes together and actually already know how they're going to function and take advantage of microbial synergies? Oh, bummer. Measuring microbial synergies just takes too long. Like, you can't explore the entire ecosystem because there are literally billions of measurements that need to be made. Wouldn't it be cool if you had a technology that could measure billions of microbial interactions? Oh, hey, Concerto invented that tool. Like, did you see how long it took me to get from like something that someone can actually relate to the like just weaving your way down to the technology that we actually work on? You don't get that much attention in an investor pitch. And so iterating, going back to Gleb's point, iterating on your story and getting people to help you think about, like, what is an investor selecting for? An investor cares about a large market. And so currently the way that we open our story is every time that humanity gets better at controlling microbes, we unlock a massive amount of value. So we learned to kill microbes, we got a massive antibiotics industry. We learned to engineer microbial genes, we got the synthetic biology industry. There's another wave of microbial products that are based on microbial interactions and microbial communities, but nobody can get to that wave without understanding the underlying ecology. And that's the technology that Concerto invented. And like, that is a much more succinct way of expressing what we do, why it matters, what the value is that can be captured. And so I just use that as like an illustration of sometimes the thing you're working on is super, super complex, and figuring out how to drive right to the thing that's going to catch an investor's attention. And honestly, like, catch anybody's attention, because it just takes too long to explain all of that. That's like a major thing that we've been working on over the last few months.
Josh, would love to hear your take on this. You know, it's been seemingly smooth, but I'm sure behind the scenes you're encountering challenges just like the rest of us. So, you know, what are you focused on right now, and what have you worked through, and or what are some of the challenges you anticipate down the road?
Yeah, I mean, just like on the actual like technical startup side, there's this infinite delays that you just never would have anticipated. And so, or even if you do anticipate them, you don't actually want to say that you anticipated them, because you want to present a timeline that's reasonable. But even if you know that there's going to be delays, right? I bet you the VCs are also like anticipating whatever, they add some time to your timeline. So you don't already add more time to your timeline if they're already doing that for you, if that makes any sense. But the other challenge, I suppose, is more not like startup specific or Glyphic specific, but more so the sort of the process of being an entrepreneur in a startup, and for everyone in the audience, like, right, being an entrepreneur is not necessarily like, I would say it's something that like perception wise, it's amazing. Oh my God, you're an entrepreneur. Like, that's so cool. Like you're, but like that, on the day to day, like if you're someone who like prefers like a more chill life, or like wants to like not be working all the time to like, you know, to like midnight because like you have deadlines for like things in like so many different areas, and like, you know, you have a pitch deck due tomorrow, but you also have you have to be on the panel. You also have to all these things. It's just, there's so many of these things that it's something to consider in terms of what life you anticipate for yourself, and whether at this stage of your life this is what you actually want to be doing. For me, the answer is yes, but I think it is a calculated, knowing that this is sort of like sacrifices that I'm choosing to make in order to make this vision and dream a reality. I think is something to take into consideration.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, and thanks all for sharing a bit about your journeys and the roller coasters that you've been on, and maybe taking the other side of that coin. I'm curious to ask you all, you know, as you look towards the future, where do you see your entrepreneurial journey headed? And has Nucleate played any role in helping to shape your future goals?
You know, here at Glyphic, we plan to be a Decacorn because, you know, being a unicorn is too easy for biotech nowadays. I joke, but it's true.
I'm gonna steal that from you, Josh. That's amazing.
No, any company in biotech now can become a unicorn pre-product, right? It's crazy to think about. So Decacorn, that's the answer. But definitely would not have even imagined that this would be possible, right, without the Nucleate Bio. I mean, so if any of you watched this pitch we had for Genentech, Lab Central, like this past Friday, the vision that we had there was already expanded upon the vision that we had developed during Nucleate Bio. And I think starting from those foundations, the Nucleate Bio, really like the visions we have for Glyphic, it just continued to expand. And so I'm very excited to see, like, you know, take over the world one day. But
yeah, I think if we're comfortable, one day we should post our first pitch deck that we started with in the first iteration when we went into our mentor meeting, just like January, and then the one that you actually raised money on, because it will be universes in between.
I think one thing is the confidence you build and the set of skills that you build as you do this. You know, to kind of, Josh mentioned a bit earlier how, you know, this is a pretty all-encompassing job to actually be the founder of a company. It takes a lot of time. It's pretty all, you know, takes over your life in certain ways, but the learning that you'll get there is amazing. So like, you know, I know other people face this sort of question. I sort of faced it a little bit. You know, as someone coming out of, like, especially out of academia, out with a PhD, you have a lot of really good opportunities. You can get really good job, really solid salary, sort of choose what you want work-life balance to mean for you, and work on really cool, impactful things that don't require starting your own company. And there's even this worry that, like, if I try to start a company and if it fails, or if like I spend several years doing it and then it still fails, there's this fear that now I'm kind of back at the starting point. And I could have like gotten started on my like sort of other career 3 years ago. So now I'm behind my peers. And like, I felt that like a little bit, and I've seen people like feel that, but the reality is as soon as you're in it and doing it, you just realize, holy cow, like I've learned all about hiring. I've learned all about sort of building and enabling the team. I've learned all these things about planning and technical things, talking to a million different kinds of audiences, investors, partners, panels like this. And like all these skills sort of at the end, you're building to succeed, and you are going to do everything you can to do so, to become a Decacorn, as Josh put. I don't know why he's thinking so small though, but But anyway, these are like skills that if this doesn't work out, like you're gonna like have a very powerful tool set to do something next, whether it's starting another company, whether it's joining another company. The value of the assets, the maybe like bigger salary you give up in the near term will be justified as long as you're thoughtful and you're iterating or learning while you're doing it.
Centicorn, is that the the 100 version? So I would say, what we're trying to build Concerto into. Oh, there was a poll that just popped up. Amazing. What we're trying to build Concerto into is the inventor of microbial ensembles, these groups of microbes that will, revolutionize the way that people relate to microbes, that you'd have microbial products that actually work. And beyond that, it's really hard to see beyond that, right? Like my whole life is this and dreaming about what we're trying to build Concerto into. And that's absolutely where I want to be right now. I think everything that Gleb was saying about the skill sets you gain are incredible. Before this, I thought I might be a professor. I ended up deciding not to do that because I had this incredible team that just like this moment of deciding we're going to spin this technology out into a company, it just felt so unique and special. And I do kind of still feel like maybe I'll go back and be a professor someday, because that is sort of always on the table. I also think that, wow, I'm so excited for the next company that I start, where I don't have to be learning all of this from scratch every single day, just trying to understand what's happening to me. So yeah, I don't know. I feel very open to whatever comes my way in terms of, how Nucleate or the activator program impacted my own personal journey. I think it was just seeing how incredibly supportive the entrepreneurial ecosystem is, and that if you are willing to put yourself out there and just like say the thing that you're dreaming about, be willing to put this like beautiful idea that you love dearly out into the world and let it get beat up, like it will get stronger and you will get stronger and people will join around you, because there are so many people that are hungry for beautiful ideas that they want to support. And yeah, you can gain a lot of traction just by participating in the ecosystem at all.
Amazing. I know I, for one, and I know I speak for the rest of the group as well, in saying we look forward to seeing your continued growth and hope all of the success for you as teams in the multiple ways that success can be defined. Maybe one of the things we can do as an organization, much like there was a preclinical IPO trend a few years ago, maybe we'll start the pre-formation IPO trend to go along with Josh's Decacorn ambitions. With that, I just want to give a final reminder to everyone to apply to the program. And if you're on the fence and are a little unsure, just err on the side of applying. Get in contact with us as a team. We'd be happy to sit down with you, talk through what you're up to, what the benefits might be. And if you're concerned about the potential time commitment that it might require, we have yet to meet a single individual who hasn't told us that this was worth their time. So, with the 1 minute that we have left, would love to just do a quick fire 15-second pitch from the panel for someone who's on the fence. Why should they apply?
It's pretty easy. The world needs more entrepreneurs. If we think of what we're up against, then we need to be starting to think that founding a company will never end in failure, because nothing ever dies. Everything you'll do in this startup life will benefit someone, some technology. And if we start all thinking like entrepreneurs, we can actually create change.
Josh, you're up next.
I would say that if you're already here on this webinar, you've already taken that first step and already, far ahead on your entrepreneurial journey than most people. And so since you've already taken that first step, you should take that second step and formally apply to the Nucleate Bio program. And join, maybe next year you'll be on the panel like one of us. So
this is general advice. Don't you tell you no. Let the world tell you no. The world will tell you no plenty of times. You give yourself as many opportunities as you possibly can. So apply.
And Gleb, last but not least.
Yeah, I think it's a great program, given, especially for the folks looking to get a company coming out of the academia point. It's actually a very hard problem to do, traditionally done by, informal biotech investors, the East Coast investors, as we refer to them. This is the program that will give you the toolkit to figure this out, how to do it yourself, and it's worked. It's working for people, and I think it's kind of changing the paradigm of what's possible.
Thank you all. And yeah, we just want to close out here by saying a huge thanks to all of you participants for joining today to learn more about the program, and especially also to our panelists, Floris, Cheri, Josh, and Gleb. We know you're all incredibly busy building your companies, but appreciate you taking the time today to share your journey and to share how Nucleate impacted your journey. We're so great to hear that Nucleate was a part of your journey and that it has been a positive influence to date. So thank you all. And if there's any further questions, please feel free to reach out to the Nucleate team, and happy to answer. And look forward to seeing you all in the program.